Hello, and welcome back to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. It's Bailey, and I hope you're having a great Wednesday or whenever you're listening to today's episode. Today, we are jumping into HTMA. What is it? What are my results? How am I moving forward? And honestly, what did I realize? And you guys, I will be honest, it absolutely wrecked me. As somebody who is now a little over 6 months postpartum, I'm having grace with myself, but also know there's a lot of gaps that I need to provide support for my body. So we are going to dive into those results, and really I just hope to share more about it with you. HTMA is not a new thing, but it's something new that I am offering. And really the first step was looking at my own results, right? And so when I did this, I knew that I wanted to share the results with you, be very open, be very transparent. There is a lot of different things I'm going to cover, and at some points it might be like, what is she talking about? And hopefully that is not the case. I really hope to explain this well, but like I said, when you get your results back, you are using the NAQ, so the Nutritional Assessment Questionnaire. We're using HTMA results. I utilized blood work and incorporated my functional blood testing piece into this. And a lot of this isn't maybe new information, but it's giving it to me in a different way, right? So when I did functional blood testing, when did I do that? That was probably about 3 months ago. I had my friend Lyndon look at my results because I trust her with my life, and she gave me some really good feedback, really good things for me to focus on. However, HTMA is looking at the last 2 to 3 months. So even though I might be implementing what she had recommended and trying to do the best I can with that protocol, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and this just gave me a really clear area to focus on. In addition to doing what I'm doing, there's a prioritization pathway that I'm taking with my results, and that's kind of was laid out in the training that I did. So it's giving me a clear place to start, and then I will just continue to advance my protocol and focus on other areas of my health, which are ultimately just supporting my body in general, right? Again, I am still only 6 months postpartum, and I honestly don't know how long the postpartum phase lasts, but I know as long as you're breastfeeding, I feel like your body is in a constant state of depletion, and that is very much the case for me. Now, I am somebody, if you haven't listened to my first ever recorded episode where I give a full breakdown of my health journey, I do share very transparently that I have struggled with under eating for most of my life. I wouldn't say most of my life. I would say since probably 7th grade, when, just appearance really became big for me. I was in sports, I was active, I was doing a lot of things, and consistently probably under fueling. And, I think the generational impact of food is obviously a piece here of just how you learn to eat. And for me, I feel like I've been self-conscious of my appearance since I was in 1st grade. I can think back to feeling self-conscious about what my legs looked like compared to my friends who were just so tiny. And so when that is historically something I have dealt with and worked through, I continue to notice how that is impacting my health to this day. And that is not to say that to scare you or even scare myself by saying that, but just knowing that my history of under eating is still impacting my health right now shows me how long of a process taking care of your body really is. And that's what I really also just want to share is it will not be 3 months. It'll probably not be a 6-month process. And I think that's hard when you're getting support from an outside source. I've worked with many coaches in the past and have friends now that can give feedback and ideas and encouragement and direction to me that I trust. But oftentimes when I work with clients, I'll say I work with clients for typically at least 6 months. And that's not saying by the end of 6 months, everything is working perfectly, right? And I will share time and time again, my journey, even just the chronic pain piece of my journey was 2+ years of work. And then it came down to my relationship with food and under eating and my metabolism and supporting that. And there's so many pieces that I'm still obviously working on and addressing that need a lot of support. And so I don't of course, share that to scare you, but I share that just to let you know that taking care of your body is not a destination. It's something you'll be doing forever. It's something I'm constantly doing. I really just want you and I want myself to find joy in the journey, right? We need to enjoy the process of taking care of ourselves. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to stick with it, and your health is just going to continue to be impacted by your choices. And I know that can sound harsh, but it's true. And now that I'm working with moms, I've seen very, very common patterns of underfueling, specifically calories, right? But also protein and water intake, and really just, it's almost that sacrifice, but it's also a form of self-destruction. And I had this conversation, I spoke at a church a couple weeks ago, and we kind of had this conversation of like, yes, it's sacrificial to let your kids have all the fruit in the house and not have any yourself, but that's also hindering your own health. And if you want to be able to pour into your family, you have to really take care of yourself in conjunction with taking care of your family, right? Fill your cup so you can pour into other people. And when we don't do that, then I think that's when we see our body start to really take a hit. And again, I'm talking from personal experience. Nothing I ever say is meant to sound preachy, but it's truly just probably something I'm personally struggling with, so I share it with you. But you deserve more than the scraps on your child's plate while you're running out the door, is essentially what I'm saying. And I just notice that time and time again how women are underfueling consistently, which is impacting metabolism. Something I'm doing consistently, which is impacting my metabolism. And then we get into later years and we struggle to lose weight, or perimenopause, or menopause hits us really, really hard. Again, I work with that age of women as well, where we see, okay, like weight gain really, really amped up around 45. Well, let's look at your history of eating. You've historically underfueled your body, neglected the protein, neglected the strength training, and now we're seeing this as a result. It's not always your hormones to blame, which I don't say that to say that those aren't a factor, because they can be. But I'm telling you, regardless of if you're 24 or 65, if you are chronically stressed, your body and your metabolism and your hormones will continue to be impacted. And it's something that, like I said, I'm constantly having to work through, and I've recognized, and I would say HTMA, if anything, it exposed that pattern of myself, of the pattern of chronic stress, of extreme burnout, and I need to make some adjustments there. So that is all to say we're diving into that. I know I just kind of jumped into it, right, with the really heavy and, I don't know, the heavy stuff, but I really don't want to mess around on today's episode. I really just want to jump into it because I think it's fun. I think this is exciting. HTMA is like the personality test for your body. If you're somebody who loves like an Enneagram or a like Clifton Strengths Finder type of test, you're going to love HTMA. And that is because it just gives you very tangible, very realistic ways to support your body. It's not quite as abstract as blood work is. I feel like I get on blood work assessments or blood work consultations, and it's like, all right, like how can we, and I'm not saying dumb down because I don't believe that my clients can comprehend, because I work with a very smart and intelligent people. But it's just a lot, and it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to digest. And sometimes it can be hard to find that exact direction to go in. And so with HTMA, my hope is to just be a little bit lighter, right? Like this isn't anything heavy or dark, but it's just a general guideline. It gives you really good direction on where to focus. And ultimately, if you're able to combine both blood work and HTMA, I think that is just kind of the best of the best. That's what I did with my results. And it just, again, it's giving you research, right? Or I wouldn't say research. It's giving you an internal snapshot, I guess is how I would say that, right? We are able to utilize measurements and markers to see both what's happening in the body, but also progress. And that's when it gets so fun, is when you're working with somebody and you're working on specific areas of their health and they start to see progress. And maybe, you know, their most obvious symptom has not yet improved, but all of the other ones have. It's like, that's because of this marker. That's because of this ratio. And we're able to make a correlation to why symptoms are improving. And that just encourages you to keep going. I really think it does. And so anytime I see a client maybe get discouraged or feel like, I just don't know, why is this one symptom not changing? I always like to redo lab testing, either blood work or HTMA, just so we can look at it and be like, these things are improving, right? This is still an area that needs support, but this is why other things are improving. And it's so fun. And so I really offer a functional testing package, which gives you both. But today, like I said, I'm just diving into HTMA just to give you kind of an idea of what this is, what this would look like for you. Before I jump into it, though, if you have not left a rating or review for the podcast, I would greatly appreciate that. This is something I've been doing for over 2 years, which is so crazy that I've been podcasting for that long. Obviously, off and on. I'm trying to be more consistent. But as you will hear from my breakdown of HTMA, I also need to find some sort of, and I hate the word balance, I need to find some sort of boundaries around work, around phone time, around social media, so that I can show up for people and show up for myself and do things like the podcast that just continues to give people free information, and obviously take what you will from the podcast. But I would love to hear what you're taking away from today's episode, either in the comments if you're listening on Spotify, or by leaving a 5-star rating and a 5-star review. It would mean so much to me. Okay, I was trying to think if there's any exciting updates before we jump into the bulk. And I think no, I'll address those on next week's episode. Maybe we can do a little bit more of a catch up in the beginning of the episode just to keep things light, but today we're jumping into it. So I'm going to start with my results with HTMA and kind of tell you what my metabolic type is. And HTMA, like I said, it's kind of the personality test of functional testing. It gives you your metabolic type, so it shows you what your body does best with digestive-wise. So what I found about myself is that I'm a slow 1. A slow 1 means that I do best if I have 40% of my diet be carbs, starchy carbs in a little bit of moderation, but mostly getting them from cooked fruits and vegetables, 35% protein, and 25% of my diet coming from fat. So I actually do best with a low fat, moderate protein, and higher carb, but really carb and protein is kind of that fine balance, almost about exact. Now, if you've listened to last week's podcast episode, you would hear my underfueling experience and my tendency to underfuel. So HTMA actually showed me, because this is a mineral test, so you're taking a hair sample and it shows by taking a hair sample, because it is about an inch of growth from the scalp, you are able to see 2 to 3 months worth of information in your body and what's happening in your body. So the ratio that I noticed, the mineral ratio, was calcium to potassium. And this showed that my body was not getting enough calories. Now, like I said, if you listen to last week's podcast episode, you would hear that for probably until about a month ago, I was chronically underfueling, and that's still something I'm working on. I was about 900 calories under what my BMR is, my basal metabolic rate, with adding in exercise and breastfeeding, which is an extra 450 calories per day. So obviously underfueling is a huge component as to why that ratio was very high. Actually, calcium to potassium was very high, showing that I am not having enough calories within my diet. And so what I'm doing and how I'm moving forward is I'm taking that BMR, so how many calories I need, and when it comes to tracking, which I don't think I'm going to add in tracking right now, I really am just going to focus on protein, having that be the first thing I eat on my plate. My goal for protein is about, based off of weight. Let me do that calculation really quick here. We are going to do my weight times 0.8. You're doing this in real time with me. So that means I need 108 grams of protein per day. So that is my goal. I'm going to take that and divide that by 5, because that's how many meals I'm trying to have per day. Smaller meals, but meals nonetheless, because I know my digestive system is going to be more supported if I do smaller meals more consistently. Also, showing low blood sugar too means that I'm underfueling on the carbs, and I need more of that quick energy. And so I want to have more consistent meals throughout the day, overall increasing protein intake, but also increasing my calories. This also shows because potassium was low and sodium was also low from my test. So that means I need to add in more coconuts, avocados, potatoes, tomatoes, bananas, sweet potatoes, beans, legumes. And then sodium, which is so interesting because I add trace mineral drops to my water. I know it's something I do probably twice a day that I could be better with, but I also always use a Celtic salt or a Redmond's red salt, and I would really like to start adding in an electrolyte packet again instead of just doing those trace mineral drops. So I need to do more sauerkraut, pickled veggies, eggs, and salt. Again, because I'm breastfeeding, that makes a lot of sense as to why potassium and sodium would be very low for me, because, with breastfeeding, you are literally creating milk. So you have a lot of nutrients and minerals within your milk production, and that leaves your body pretty depleted. So the slow metabolizer, again, I'm a slow 1. It means that my body's just having a harder time producing enough energy to get through the day. So this can be often linked to a slow thyroid, which I did see patterns of hypothyroid symptoms and hypothyroidism, not a diagnosis. No testing that I do is ever a diagnosis, but patterns and really a lot of symptoms that correlate to that, or sluggish adrenal glands. So oftentimes you're fatigued, especially mid-afternoon, and you need sugar or something to give you a pick-me-up. Other signs can be, again, that slow metabolism, so depression, low blood sugar, low blood pressure, which I definitely had patterns of low blood sugar. And that showed up in both blood work and in my HTMA test. So I really need to prioritize, like I said, those fruits and vegetables, really need more protein. And I feel like I've really prioritized that, but I know I could do better. Okay, the other piece of this too is when we look at HTMA, there are so many routes and so much information you get, but using the prioritizing protocol, I guess is what I'm going to call it, you're able to find what needs the focus first, and that would be my NA to K ratio. Also, another piece too of calcium to magnesium that was very high. Just to really expose myself here, that was 21.49, and 7 is optimal. So what this ratio means is you need calcium because this is going to release the insulin to the pancreas. And then you need magnesium, which is historically low even in my blood testing, to create and use insulin. So my blood sugar was tended to be on the low side, showing that balance is kind of causing that low blood sugar pattern to show up. So this could be sugar cravings. I would say what I notice most often is just low brain function, and something about me is I get very hangry if I don't eat when I need to eat. I need food pretty consistently, or I get hangry, that combination of hungry and angry. Also, that difficulty concentrating, which makes a lot of sense. I think for me, I've always thought like maybe it's because my brain is in so many different places, which could obviously be a factor. But just knowing that I tend to be on the low blood sugar side of things, that means that my brain just really struggles to function at optimal capacity because my body doesn't really have the energy to do that. My brain is the most impacted with this, and so my brain is the slowest, right? There's brain fog, there's fatigue, there's that difficulty concentrating. Now, this often happens when there are patterns of over-exercising or eating too little calories, both of which I would say I've either historically done or I'm currently doing. The low calories piece, that is something I'm actively aware of, but the over-exercising piece, I've gotten so much better with that postpartum. Prior to pregnancy, I had gotten better, but I still work out about 6 times a week minimum and add in a walk. Okay, so I know it is still something that needs help. I think what's very eye-opening with this is I always thought my metabolism, I could speed it up if I would just work out more and eat less. Obviously, 2 of the worst things you can do for your metabolism. That is to show you I am still actively learning and I don't know everything. And I hope you know that by now. But just, what we think about dieting, right? Or if we think about weight gain, I would say, again, the body type associated with this is kind of a pear shape, carrying more weight in your thighs and your butt and your hips. Definitely me. I always have. And so with that, it's like, we think, okay, well, if you're carrying weight there, that means you need to eat less, because if you've got extra fat in that area of your body, which it could be linked to estrogen dominance, it could be hormonally related, it could be thyroid related, which I'll talk about. I would say hormones are really hard for me to look at postpartum because I don't have a normal cycle right now. But even just thinking about that body pattern, it's like, well, I just need to eat less and exercise more, do more cardio. I need to run. I need to walk more to thin out my legs, right? And in reality, it is because the overdoing it, the under eating piece. And again, things that I know and probably I've learned, but to implement it is a different story, right? And I really do like to practice what I preach. I'm somebody that if I'm going to tell a client to do something, like I better be doing it too. So that is where testing like this is eye-opening, because it shows where there are still gaps within myself, right? If I'm always working with other people and providing feedback for other people, sometimes I can neglect myself the most. And so realizing where that neglection is happening and then also supporting those areas. So with this too, this is impacting my liver, right? So when we see low blood sugar, that is an impact directly on your liver and your body struggle to detox. So this can also be linked to thyroid issues or hypothyroid tendencies. Like I said, that was present within blood work, and I'm going to dive into that in a little bit too. With this, like I said, that slow metabolism, but the emotion tied to this is that extreme burnout. So what I need to do is I need to be eating enough and eating regularly. I've been trying to add in those 5 smaller meals, but I'm not perfect every single day. I would say my Mondays and Tuesdays are the worst day, and I take the worst care of myself on Mondays and Tuesdays because those are my full client days. And when I'm sitting at a computer, I'm less active. I am in between calls, right? I can't always make time for a mid-morning snack, but then I need to be preparing a shake, a protein shake, something to have with me so that I can be drinking something while I'm on a call instead of eating something. So it's just taking, and I'm kind of talking you through kind of the adjustments I could make, but it's taking the time to be strategic with it. And that is probably my favorite part of my job, is figuring out how we can be strategic with taking care of ourselves. As moms, as working women, as women taking care of children, it is sometimes really difficult to prioritize nutrition because your schedule might look crazy. Like I was just talking to a client a couple weeks ago, and she has a lot of appointments back to back to back and would skip breakfast, wouldn't have anything for a mid-morning snack, would rely on caffeine in the afternoon to get her through, have a small lunch. We had to be really strategic with, okay, what can we do in between those client sessions? What can we do in between or during your lunch break, right? How can we prioritize breakfast? Do we need to set the clock forward 15 minutes? Do we need to prep ahead on Sunday? Like, what can we do to be strategic? And I think that's like the whole puzzle piece of this too, right? Of like, we're figuring out how we can make this work for my lifestyle is what I'm talking through right now, but also anybody's lifestyle, right? And everybody's lifestyle looks different. So how can we be strategic with it? Like I said, I think my diet history or my dieting history is impacting this too. Sleep is also being impacted. You know, Oliver slept through the night for a couple months, and then he decided to, at 4 months, not sleep through the night, which is fine. Obviously, we can't be expecting our babies to sleep through the night under a year old. Like, I think that's kind of a silly expectation, but some nights he's waking up 4 times, 5 times. Sometimes I'm getting like 2 hours of restful sleep. So I know sleep is being impacted, but again, that's the stage of life I'm at. So what can I do to support my body, even if I can't change my situation? And that is something that has provided so much comfort to me over the last year of what can I do to support my body, even if my environment can't change, even if my circumstances can't change. And there are always things that we can do. You know, I think sometimes we get in that headspace of like, well, when, work is slower, then I'll be able to take care of myself. Or when I, get past planning a wedding, I'll be able to take care of myself. And the truth is you're able to multitask. We are amazing multitaskers, and it should work for you. Taking care of yourself should work for you. It should not feel like a burden. It should not feel overwhelming. And maybe at first it will, but I think oftentimes we think like, well, when this circumstance changes or when this environment changes, and I was just telling Nathan before I got on to record of like, my body is not doing well with the mold exposure. Like, it is not doing well. I would say like, I feel like I'm teetering on the side of an autoimmune issue with the exposure to mold. And that's just something maybe it's in my head, maybe it's something, it's something I'm exposed to every single day. It is so obviously in our bathroom, and there's a lot of it. And we are actively working to fix that situation. But as you know, I don't need to get into the saga of it. It has been a long time coming to get anything going when it comes to renovating that bathroom. So I also, on the topic of mold, encourage you to listen to the Testimony podcast. Lyndon has a podcast, and she actually just recorded an episode on mold, and it provided me so much comfort and assurance that I'm doing what I can with the environment I'm in, right? And that's exactly what I'm saying. You can do what you can in the environment and the situation you're in. So highly, highly recommend listening to that episode if that is you. Okay, so then another piece of this too, to support my metabolism, and not even necessarily looking to increase metabolism, although yes, ideally, I think I would love to see a change there. I don't feel like, I'm not somebody who is overweight, I will say that. And I don't feel like I'm like actively gaining weight, but I've always felt like I've carried weight in my midsection, and that is linked to stress, that is linked to cortisol production, cortisol dysregulation. Obviously, we always think hormones, but sometimes your body's just under a lot of stress and you're not supporting it. And I know that is really brutal. I can think of a couple examples with clients of just that refusal to slow down, that refusal to do less, that refusal to set boundaries. And, when you have to be willing to do that. And for myself, like I have to be willing to make the change. Like I have to be willing to stop with the patterns of burnout. And that is really difficult for me because I think I historically have overdone it. And again, these probably are not new things that I'm sharing with you, but I'm just being very, very transparent. Historically, I've overdone it, and I think I did really well for maybe a month after coming off my maternity leave. And then you just get addicted to the hit, don't you? Like you get addicted to working, you get addicted to overdoing it, and you find yourself back in a very, very familiar pattern. And that is me. So, if that is you, again, sometimes it takes like that brutal honesty with yourself of like, are you overdoing it? Are there things you are doing? Are you overcommitting? Are you not saying no? Are you blaming a body, result on hormones when really it's just your addiction to stress? And that is really hard to hear, right? I wish I could look at it and be like, oh yeah, it's because my hormones. Oh yeah, it's because XYZ. And truly, it's because of my addiction to stress and my addiction to overexercising. And I don't say addiction lightly. I am being 100% truthful when I say like I have overexercised for years and years and years, and it is really hard for me to break that. And again, I'm not saying addiction. I know that's not something to be made light of, but that's something that's exposing. I guess I'm exposing myself, and maybe it's providing a chance for you to really look nitty gritty at what's going on. And I think that's with symptoms. And when we get results like this, it's like, well, duh, like I already knew that about myself. But when you can see that your body is not functioning optimally because of your constant need to be doing and not resting, it just makes it more real, right? And it gives you a marker to look back at and point at and be like, oh yeah, like that marker is very high or very low. And that is causing my body to not feel its best, right? I would say brain fog and cloudy brain, again, things that I could link to mold exposure, yes, but maybe it's just that addiction to stress. Maybe it's just that need for constantly working or multitasking, something that I obviously fall into very, very often. So another piece of this too is with HTMA, because you are showering, you're washing your hair, when you take a hair sample, you're able to see any toxic exposures. And for me, uranium was an exposure. That one was pretty high, but I would say because of our usage of well water, we drink through a Berkey water filter. However, I wash my hair with well water, and well water typically has a lot of minerals. So it's kind of like trading some good for some bad. Everything else toxic element wise was low to zero, but uranium was high. And I would also say too, when I wash my water or when I wash my fruits and vegetables, I just use tap water, which is not highly filtered. So I would assume that is contributing, but it was not something that I would say right now is going to be a primary focus. Okay, so I want to go back to the thyroid because my thyroid was showing that it needs more support. So again, I was showing patterns of that hypothyroidism. So maybe weight gain in the hip area, fatigue, low energy, low blood sugar. Lithium was also really high, which can block your thyroid stimulating hormone production, TSH. manganese, I'm so bad at pronouncing things, was also very low. So I need to increase this within diet. And so in addition to following a slow metabolic type diet, that is, again, where I said we're doing carbs, protein, lower fat, which is so interesting because coming back to this, I notice that if I eat a lot of fat, I feel like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like my stomach just feels like sludge. I would be 100% honest. And I've noticed that for a long time. And I've done, the low carb diet and I've done the low fat diet. And I will tell you, I've probably felt the best when I was actually doing low fat. And I will never tell somebody to buy low fat foods. But when I was in my chronic dieting phase, this is probably 3 years ago, and I was buying the sugar-free, fat-free foods, I actually felt really good. Like, I'm going to be very, very transparent. I felt really good. Now, the symptoms of doing low carb, not good. The symptoms of doing low protein and low calories, not good. But digestive-wise, I felt real good doing low fat. So that is something that I just need to get back into, not buying fat-free, but just being a little bit more aware of how my body utilizes fat or doesn't utilize fat, and how it makes me feel. So I need to increase the manganese in my food. So following the slow diet, but also pecans, brown rice, oysters, pineapple, oatmeal, and spinach are all really good sources of that. The role of manganese, and I'm probably pronouncing so many things wrong, I need to work on that. But the role of it is to metabolize glucose. It's responsible for thyroid activity and the formation of T4, which is one of your thyroid hormones. So this is something I know I need to increase. Also, calcium potassium is considered the thyroid ratio, and mine was very elevated. So it means that there's plenty of TSH and T4 within my thyroid or within my liver, because that metabolism actually happens, or that conversion actually happens within the liver. But there's plenty of it, but it's not able to get to where it should or be utilized how it should. So that's why I might notice fatigue or low energy, and again, have those other symptoms of hypothyroidism, okay? With this, I would say the most dominant piece is chronic stress. I was in an extreme parasympathetic dominance phase, which is very concerning. Means that I tend to be on that burnout and exhaustion wavelength. This reduces your metabolism's efficiency. What is kind of underlying here and things that I need to work and look more at would be those limiting beliefs that I have, negative thoughts. Again, I think if we think about, what you tell yourself when you walk past a mirror, or even just like the belief around my business and my ability to work with people and the success, quote success, because what does that look like, right? Of my business and all of that like contributes. And I would say that weighs very, very heavy on me. And sometimes there's that imposter syndrome, and I'm somebody who wants to know everything about everything. And when I don't feel well prepared, and then it stresses me out, and then I spiral, and then it's like, okay, Bailey, like we need to take a deep breath, right? And so that is where I need to do some work there. There might be some frustration or resentment. I would say too, like when it comes, I would say honestly, all my stress comes from my job. And it shouldn't, because I do what I love. I work with incredible people. I am busy doing what I love. I'm doing it full time. Like there's so many positives that I have to remind myself of, but I let a lot of things weigh on me. And I think I overthink a lot of things, or overthink certain interactions, maybe certain things I said to a client and hope I didn't offend them or make them upset with me, or maybe they're not seeing the results that they had wanted to at a certain point. And so then I carry a lot of that. Truthfully, I take on a lot of that responsibility because I care, and I care very, very deeply about the people that I work with and have in my life. I just do. So that makes it really difficult for me not to take on some of those negative thoughts. And maybe even find that frustrating because I wish I didn't, but I do. So how do we address that? But also a decreased immune system. So mold is a piece where I would say that was more prevalent within blood work, is like there's an exposure there. There's obviously so many things I can do to support my body, even when my environment can't change right now. But I will say if I And this is too when you're breastfeeding and when you're pregnant, your immune system is just taking a hit. You're typically depleted. I've said that so many times, but you're depleted, low energy. A lot of that just happens by not eating enough or just the phase of life you're in, right? Like your body is actively giving nutrients to somebody else, so your body takes a hit. And I would say my immune system throughout pregnancy was really, really compromised, and I now notice like if I'm exposed to somebody who is sick or a virus like hand, foot, and mouth, I will get like rashes on my tongue, on the roof of my mouth, on my whatever the little thing that hangs down in the back of your throat is. I think I said it once, but I said the wrong word, and I don't need to get it confused with something else in your body. However, I'll notice like a little rash there, or I'll get a rash like in my groin area, just super interesting reactions. And again, if there's patterns of mold happening and that we can see in the blood work, that makes sense. But also there's more things I could be doing to support my immune system, like eating enough, like eating in a way that supports healthy digestion. Me doing a lot of fat and not a lot of protein and moderate carbs or low carbs. Sometimes I have bouts of like running to the bathroom because I've got an extreme issue happening. That also can be stemmed by a lot of high stress, right? The motility of your gut can be impacted by stress. So stress is kind of that underlying piece here that I really, really want to kind of emphasize. And lastly, kind of wrapping this up, just because there's a lot of ratios. So you can see single mineral status, and you can also see ratios, which I would say when you look at HTMA, you're looking for the most dominant ratio or the most obvious ratio that needs support. So Na/K, or also known as the sodium to potassium ratio, mine was very low. And again, I said this kind of in the beginning, but I'm just wrapping this all up because there's a lot of factors at play here. But this is the most important one for me to address right now. So I will say the calcium to potassium ratio is going to probably be the next one that I address. We are starting with the sodium to potassium ratio. And I think one thing here that I really was just like kind of shocked and like blown away by how much it can tell you. But this is the vitality in and energy within your cells. So your cellular energy. And that's why fatigue can be present. So what's so cool is, yes, you can see a symptom like fatigue, but then you can make the connection to like, why is that happening, right? There could be low cellular activity. It could be, then you think of like, okay, what are the behaviors that are stemming from that, right? Or under eating, not eating enough protein, over exercising, stress, that's going to deplete your body in general. So that's always just good to know, like what's actually happening within the body, what is your symptom, and what is the habit that is creating that? And what is, I guess, potentially a habit that's creating that? But also the tissue breakdown in joints that occurs when this is very low. I would say I do have a family history of arthritis. And so just knowing that also is like, okay, that's huge awareness for me, because if I don't take care of myself, take care of my tissues and my joints, that tissue breakdown can occur, and that is very concerning. So it's very important that obviously strength training, I'm supporting low blood glucose or low blood sugar, that I am eating enough protein, and overall just reducing the stress on my body in general to then support my thyroid and support my adrenals. So sluggish thyroid, sluggish adrenals is often linked to this, and that is something that I do think will all come as a result of me doing the other pieces of the puzzle. So obviously a huge need to prioritize rest, to prioritize boundaries. So actively, I guess, kind of to give you my own protocol that I'm giving myself. Boundaries around phone usage. Phone gets put away at 8 p.m. I don't look at it until 8 a.m. That's going to be number one for me. In addition to this, I want to be supporting my liver, because that supports my thyroid, and making sure that I am doing some sort of natural detox tea 1 time per day, right? Adding in tea is a great way to support different organs in your body. Typically, when you're able to support your liver, you can also support your adrenals and your kidneys. I know through blood work that my kidneys also needed a lot of support. Prioritizing those minerals, so prioritizing adding those drops to every water bottle, prioritizing eating 5 smaller meals throughout the day that are going to follow the slow 1 diet. So carbs, protein, low fat. That is kind of my focus. A lot of cooked foods, warm foods, that's also going to support thyroid. And what is so cool, and as I'm talking, I'm like, this is just where it gets fun, because we can see how this impacts this, even just if we look at traditional Chinese medicine and we think about how can we support your thyroid, you want to keep the body warm. If you see hypothyroid symptoms or patterns of that happening within the body, or any sort of conversion issue in the thyroid, obviously not hyperthyroid patterns, but hypo, that is when you want to keep the body warm, right? You want to create a heater, you want to create energy efficiency. So you're going to have cooked foods. You're going to make sure selenium and iodine are within a good range. You are going to support your liver. You are going to prioritize eating enough and really getting that metabolism in check. Adding in more sodium, making sure you've got minerals like potassium and sodium within your foods. It's just so cool how God has created our body to just function optimally. He truly has. And yesterday, I would say I was probably more in that spiral phase of just like really being critical about my results and looking at them and assessing what's going on in the body. I'm like, it all makes so much sense, but it's so wild to me, right? And it's always coming back to that reminder that God has created our body to function at a very, very high level. But God has created our body to be very, very resilient. And what's so cool about any sort of testing is that you're able to just get direction that is individualized to you, right? And when you have an individualized protocol, you're able to move forward with purpose. I think sometimes, especially in the past, I'd find myself clinging to whatever somebody on social media told me to do. And that is where I'm trying to reduce the noise on social media and instead provide guidance on how you can support your body, instead of telling you go do this if you have this issue, because it is not just black and white like that. And there's so many layers to it. And so you're getting a protocol with a purpose. You're moving forward, taking care of your body with a purpose. And it's fun. And we have to, like I said in the beginning of today's episode, we have to have fun with it. And although, yes, maybe some more extreme diagnoses can come if I were to ever see something alarming and be like, hey, you should maybe talk to your primary care or have them run this test. That is obviously not the fun part of it. I would say that is very, very, very rare that ever occurs. But for the majority of people, this can be a very enjoyable journey, and just learning more about yourself, learning what your body needs. And I think, like I've said multiple times, when you're able to see kind of the overlap between blood work and HTMA, you're able to really assess what needs to be priority. And for me, I've got my priorities laid out. I know what needs to be focus. Stress, yes, we could say, okay, everybody's stressed, but what are you doing about it? Coming back to the are you making excuses for why you're stuck in the cycle? Talking to myself, right? I'm never here to preach. I'm always here just to be very vulnerable and be very honest with where I'm at. So that is the area. Like I said, I've kind of laid out my protocol. There's little things I'll sprinkle in. And of course, foundational support is always primary focus, right? If you're not setting boundaries, if you're not managing stress, if you are not thinking about food intake, movement, sleep, those are all things that I'm like, oh yeah, there is a gap. So if there's gaps in your foundations, you're going to have an issue. And so me being able to utilize testing to identify the gap, and then also have a why behind it, right? Okay, yes, I'm noticing the pattern of calcium to potassium is very elevated. Okay, what's that? That is the why behind this symptom. That is the why behind this pattern. Me not eating enough, it's not just something that I can brush over. And I actually posted that on my Instagram. I'm like, you undereaters can run, but you can't hide, because blood work is going to tell you there's certain patterns within blood work we can see to show malnutrition, but also just too many calories, too low fat, or if you're in a fasted state. And obviously through HTMA, we can also see the same. So you can run, but you can't hide. That's what I'm telling myself. And it's just, this was really good for me. So I hope you've learned a lot about HTMA, or even just what you can get from HTMA. Things that I didn't address was hormones in specific. There are other markers, but mine looked fine. Like I said, I'm kind of in a weird phase right now because I don't have a normal cycle. Postpartum, I still have not gotten my period, maybe TMI, but things like hormones are not as much of a focus for me, but there are so many things that you can see through HTMA. So if you ever have questions of like, hey, this is a symptom I'm having, I'm a little concerned that XYZ is the cause, would HTMA give me information into that? And I can definitely give you feedback and let you know, because it really just, it's a snapshot and it tells you so much about not just right now. And that's the difference, right? With blood work, you're looking at what's happening in the body when you get your blood draw. With HTMA, we're seeing 2 to 3 months worth of info. And it's just very insightful. So obviously you could tell I very much geek out over this in the functional testing piece of what I do. I would say that's primarily what I do with clients and creating protocols. So of course, if you're interested, I'm going to have it all linked in the description of today's episode. So you can check it out. You can check out HTMA, blood testing. You can also see my functional testing package, which would be a combo of both, and just see what makes the most sense for you if you're looking for support in that area. All right, so let's go ahead and it's obviously late. I need to wrap this up. Let's go ahead and close today's episode in prayer. So dear Lord, just thank you for today. Thank you for the ability to talk openly about what I'm going through and be vulnerable. And I just pray that this podcast serves to bring light to somebody else's journey and give them direction and give them insight into how they can best support their body, that it gives them comfort in knowing that they're not alone on the journey that they're on, and just gives them ultimately direction. Lord, I pray for the state of the world. I pray for a lack of bitterness and a lack of division, and that we're just able to, as a society, come together through everything that's happening within not just the US, but in the world, and be stronger because of it, and not just let all that division continue to be so heavy on our hearts and our minds. And I pray for protection over whoever's listening to today's episode, and that they just continue to follow your path for them and be confident in your love and your care for them. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, if you're interested in following along with my life outside of the podcast, you can find me at Nourish with Bailey on Instagram, Bailey Seaton on everything else, and my email is in the description of today's episode, so you can always reach out that way too to get connected. So with that, I'll talk to you again next Wednesday. Bye.